Good evening, everyone. If I could ask members of council to take their seats, please. And I'd like to call to order the Planning and Development Committee meeting for November the 19th. Members of committee, there are some added items of correspondence this evening. 2 for item 4.2, and they are handed out in front of you. 2 as well for item 4.6, and 4 items under 4.7. So I'll be looking for someone to move those when we receive, not at this point, but certainly when we get to those items on the agenda, we'll move receipt of those as well. Are there any other additions to the agenda? Seeing none, would someone like to move approval of the agenda, please? Councillor Bowman, all those in favor? That's carried. And just as a reminder to everybody, if you could put your cellular devices on an inaudible mode this evening, so as not to disturb the proceedings this evening, it would be appreciated. Thank you. Is there somebody in the booth that can turn up the volume? Is that better? Yeah, it's one of the pitfalls of the temporary chambers that we're operating out of right now. I apologize for that. Are there any declarations of interest under the Municipal Conflict of Interest Act? Seeing none, there are no items in consent this evening. We'll now move to the statutory public meeting reports. And generally what I do is go through each of the items and ask if anybody's here, but I think this evening, because there's 8 statutory, I'll just deal with them as we go along. If there's nobody present and no presentations requested, then we'll just move on to the next one. This is a public meeting of the Planning and Development Committee held in accordance with the requirements of the Planning Act of Ontario. The proposals to be heard at this public meeting are the result of applications made under the Planning Act. These are not proposals of the City of Brampton unless they are specifically identified as city-initiated proposals. The intent of this public meeting is to hear submissions from the applicant and the public regarding these proposals. Members of the committee may ask questions of clarification only, but will not engage in debate on the proposal at this time. Committee consideration of the proposal will occur at a future meeting when planning staff bring forward the final recommendation report for each proposal. The city also has posted to its website at www.brampton.ca supporting information and documentation for all of these current development applications for public review and reference. And now we'll proceed to consider the items on this evening's statutory public meeting agenda. The first item is item 4.1. It's an application to amend the zoning bylaw to permit a daycare facility at 756 and 766 Wanless Drive, the north side of Wanless Drive, east of Chinguacousy in Ward 6. The applicant owner is Glenn Schnarr and Associates on behalf of 756 Wanless Holdings Incorporated. Is anybody in attendance this evening that wishes to hear a submission from the application or from the applicant and a presentation from city staff regarding this proposal, and then come forward and provide public input on this item? Is anybody here for item 4.2? And I'll just give staff a few minutes. We have some folks that are in the cafeteria as well as the hallway. So we'll find out if anybody is in one of those 2 locations who wishes to make a presentation, see a presentation, and to speak on item 4.1. So I don't see any hands going up in this room. Are there hands back there, Councillor Pellecci?
I know the neighbor is here.
Okay.
There is nobody.
Nobody wishes to see a presentation from the applicant or the city. So at this point, I'll ask the applicant if they wish to make a presentation for the committee's information.
No, Madam Chair, we not.
Okay. Thank you. Let the record show that no one in attendance at this statutory public meeting requested an applicant's submission, staff presentation, or requested to speak on this matter. And also let the record show that the applicant declined the opportunity to make submission to committee on this matter. Do any members of the committee have questions for city staff of clarification only? I see no speakers on the board. I have a motion from Councillor Sprovieri? Or actually, Councillor Palashi or Willens? You want to move this since it's in your area? So I have a motion by Councillor Palashi to approve the staff report. All those in favor? That's carried. Thank you very much. We'll move now to item 4.2 on the agenda. This is an application for which there were two pieces of correspondence added this evening, one from Michael Farquharson and one from Rosemary Humphreys. It's an application to amend the zoning bylaw and proposed draft plan of subdivision to facilitate a new residential subdivision development. The applicant is Candevcon Limited on behalf of 218-5715 Ontario Incorporated, and it's located on the southwest corner of Mayfield Road and McBean Drive in Ward 10. Is there anyone here this evening who wishes to hear a submission from the applicant and presentation from city staff regarding this proposal? And then I'll invite you to come forward to provide a public input on this item. Is anybody in attendance for item 4.2? If you're here for this and you want to see a presentation, just wave your hand in the air if you don't mind. And we'll wait a moment to the other two locations. There's nobody? Nobody? Okay. Let the record show that no one attending this statutory public meeting requested an applicant's submission, staff presentation, or requested to speak on this matter. Does the applicant wish to make a presentation this evening? Is there a representative? No? Okay. Let the record show that the applicant declined the opportunity to make a submission to committee on this matter. Does any member of committee have questions for city staff clarification only regarding the proposal? Seeing none, the local councillor would be Councillor Sprovieri. Would you like to move the report with the correspondence? All those in favor? That's carried. Thank you very much. The next item on the agenda is item 4.3. It's an application to amend the official plan and zoning bylaw to permit multi-unit commercial building, a mini storage facility, and additional commercial land use permissions. The applicant owner is Glenn Schnarr and Associates Incorporated on behalf of Rice Development Corporation. The location is 190 Bovaird Drive West, northwest corner of Bovaird Drive West and Ironside in Ward 2. Is there anyone here this evening who wishes to hear a submission from the applicant and presentation from city staff regarding this proposal? And then I'll ask you to come forward to provide public input on this item. Is anybody here for item 4.3 on the agenda? I don't see any hands in this room. I'll just wait for staff to advise. You're just going to check? Okay. It'll be so nice to be back in the council chambers for the new council. Nobody? 4.3. Okay. Let the record show that no one attending this statutory public meeting requested an applicant's submission, staff presentation, or requested to speak on this matter. Does the applicant wish to make a presentation this evening on this matter? Okay. Let the record show that the applicant declined the opportunity to make a submission to committee on this matter. Does any member of committee have questions of city staff for clarification only regarding the proposal? There seems to be Councillor Willens, this is in your area as well. Would you like to move this? Councillor Palashi? Okay, all those in favor? That's carried. Thank you. Councillor Palashi, you have a question?
Chair, there seemed to be a little bit of confusion on item 4.1. If Glenschnar and Associates are still here, there are people that would like to hear this, this item, if we can reopen that, and also if I can add a letter from the residents for the public record.
Okay. Who's the letter from Councillor Palashi, and we'll make it
Don
part
and
of the
Sandra
public
Bates.
record? Sorry?
Don and Sandra Bate.
Okay. So that'll be, we can hand that to the clerk. So with council's indulgence, we'll go back to item 4.1. And a presentation has now been requested on that. So I'll invite the representative from the applicant to come forward. And you must be Sarah Clark.
I sure am.
Yeah, welcome.
Pleasure. Thank you. Yeah, sure. All right.
Well, let the record show that Sarah will never forget her first presentation at Brampton Planning Committee.
Got that right. Thought I was off the hook. All right. Perfect. All right. Good evening, Madam Chair, members of the committee, and members of the public. My name is Sarah Clark, planner with Glenschnar and Associates, and I'm here today on behalf of our client, 756 Wanless Holdings, Inc., registered property owner of the lands municipally addressed as 756 and 766 Wanless Drive, located in the city of Brampton. Property is located on the north side of Wanless Drive, east of Chincoosy. The property measures approximately 0.35 hectares or 0.86 acres. The purpose of the application before us this evening is to receive comments from the public in response to the proposal and to amend the zoning, in response to the zoning bylaw amendment that will facilitate the development of a 3-story daycare facility on the subject lands. The property currently contains 2 residential dwellings. Surrounding land uses include low-density residential, open space, and commercial uses. "756 Wanless Holdings is proposing a 3-story daycare facility on the subject lands, which is proposed to have a right-in, right-out access from Wanless. There are 4 play structures proposed on site, which will be fenced in around the perimeters. Outdoor toy storage is included in these fenced-in areas. Vehicular parking at a reduced rate is proposed to accommodate pickup of children and employees, and permanent employee parking is proposed on site. Bicycle parking spaces are also proposed. A 1.9 meter to 3.9 meter wide walkway is proposed on site to facilitate safe pedestrian movement throughout the site. The sidewalk is proposed to connect to the existing sidewalk network along Wanless Drive. The proposed design of the building looks to integrate itself into the existing neighborhood in terms of facade design, mass, and scale. The elevation shows the proposed building view from the west. Here we have a summary of our proposal. The 3-story daycare facility conforms with the existing official plan and secondary plan designations. As such, the only planning application required is the zoning bylaw amendment, which is before you tonight. A service commercial zone with a special exception is proposed in order to permit for the unique characteristics of the site. I would like to note for the members of the public that a series of key supporting studies, including but not limited to a traffic impact assessment, a parking justification study, a planning justification report, tertiary plan, tree inventory and preservation plan, and an urban design brief have been prepared in support of the proposal and are currently being reviewed by the region, city, and other government agencies as a part of the due planning process. As the process moves forward, we would be happy to answer any questions you may have or meet to discuss the application in detail. Thank you for your time, and at this moment, I would like to pass on the remainder of the presentation to discuss policy to our planner at the city, Neil Grady.
Thank you very much, Sarah. Presentation on behalf of the city is made by Neil Grady, Development Planner. Welcome, Neil.
Good evening, Madam Chair, members of Planning Committee, ladies and gentlemen. My name is Neil Grady, last name Grady. I'm a planner that works here at the City of Brampton Planning Department, and I've been assigned the processing of this application to amend the zoning bylaw and the compilation of a future planning recommendation report. This evening, I'd like to present to you the current planning document status, some of the initial issues that have been identified through the circulation of the application to date, and also the next steps in the process. Starting then with the current planning document status, the property is designated residential in the city's official plan. Daycare facilities are permitted as a complementary use within the residential designation. An amendment with regard to the residential land use designation in the official plan is therefore not required. Turning then to the secondary plan, the property is designated low medium density in the Mount Pleasant secondary plan, area number 51. Daycare facilities are permitted within that designation as a complementary use, provided they are integrated in an appropriate manner with adjacent residential uses. In that respect, the applicant has submitted plans showing how the proposed facility would relate to the adjacent residential uses, and those plans are currently under review. An amendment to the secondary plan is not being sought by the applicant. Turning to the approved block plan, the approved sub-area 51-2 block plan associated with the Mount Pleasant secondary plan designates the property low, medium density residential, and the proposed redevelopment of the property does not require an amendment to the block plan. With respect to the zoning bylaw, the property is zoned agricultural A by the city's comprehensive area zoning bylaw as amended. The applicant has submitted a draft zoning bylaw amendment to facilitate the proposed daycare facility. With respect to some of the initial issues that have been identified through the circulation of the application, these issues will be addressed in detail through the processing of the application and in the future planning recommendation report. These issues are as follows. Land use compatibility regarding the integration of the proposed daycare facility, with adjacent residential uses. The adequacy of proposed on-site parking and potential traffic impacts through the review of the applicant's parking study and traffic impact study, and evaluating the scale, massing, height, and design of the proposed facility, including landscaping and the proposed removal and retention of trees, and that would occur through the review of the applicant's urban design brief and tree evaluation report. Turning then to the next steps in the processing of the application, those steps include considering all comments, questions, and written submissions received from the public, continued further technical and planning review and evaluation, including conformity with the provincial policy statement, the provincial growth plan, and the Region of Peel official plan, the preparation of a future recommendation report for the consideration of Planning and Development Committee, and the report will include a discussion on any comments, questions, or written submissions received from the public. And finally, all members of the public that provided their contact information for this application will be advised when a future planning recommendation report is finalized for presentation to a future planning committee meeting. And that concludes the presentation, Madam Chairman, and thank you very much.
Thank you very much. Are there any members of the public who wish to come forward and make some comments for the public record on this application? So I'll ask one more time. For those who are in attendance this evening who requested the presentation, did you wish to make any comments publicly? No? Okay, would someone like to move receipt of the added item of correspondence and the two presentations? Councillor Pelletier. Councillor Pelletier, question of clarification only.
Madam Chair, just wondering, when this does come back to council, can we get a little bit of history on, or what the future entails for Wanless Drive, what the future expansion, if any, bike lanes, what's the planning for that road?
Through you, Madam Chair, definitely staff can provide the characterization and some details as it relates to the current character of Wanless and also the future character that's intended.
Thank you.
Okay.
Thank you, Madam Chair.
And
Have
it
a
may
moment.
not be part of this report, but certainly, I think staff would welcome the opportunity to sit down and talk about that. I mean, elements of it can be covered in the staff report as they relate to this application.
Yep.
Okay. You've moved receipt of the presentation, the added correspondence. All those in favor? That's carried. Thank you. On item we'll now move to 4.4 in the agenda. It is an application to amend the official plan and zoning bylaw to permit a commercial development consisting of two one-story commercial buildings. The applicant owner is Technoarch Architects and Design on behalf of Chatrath Holdings Incorporated. The location is 1466-1478 Queen Street West and 9021 and 9025 Credit View Road, northeast corner of Queen and Credit View in Ward 5. Is anyone here this evening who wishes to hear a submission from the applicant and a presentation from staff regarding this proposal? You're here. Did you wish to see a presentation?
Yes.
From the applicant? Okay. Then what I will do is ask that the applicant come forward and make the presentation. Welcome. This evening, your name is David Riley?
Correct.
That I have on the record?
Yes.
Great. Thank you, and then it'll be followed by Kevin Freeman from the city. Welcome, David.
Thank you very much, Madam Chair and members of Planning Committee. Is it okay if I leave my jacket on just because I have?
I don't know,
what?
we may have to vote on
I
that.
am a little hot,
No, of
so I'm
course
gonna
you
take
can
it
leave it
off.
on.
You know what? Don't worry about it. I'll just put it right here.
All those in favor of taking his jacket off?
So I will be brief in my explanation. I believe I'll be doing the first part of the presentation, and then Mr. Freeman will be doing the latter half about the policy and zoning. So let's. You know what? I think I'll start with this slide here. The subject site is actually made up of 4 lots, 4 residential lots, kind of surrounding the northeast corner of Queen Street West and Credit View Road. So it does not include the corner property, just to be clear. This area is really, I'll zoom in on the next slide. Been undergoing a lot of change, as I'm sure many of you are aware, with all the development happening in the surroundings and a lot of infrastructure improvements happening along Queen Street. What you can see here is the subject property outlined in red, and you can see some of the surrounding uses. To the east, there is a day nursery. To the north, there's some of those more established hamlet lots that are part of the Springbrook settlement area. Some executive residential designated lands to the west, and again some of those original hamlet lots. And then to the north, there's kind of a newly developing community as well as a school. I believe it's still under construction. Haven't seen it as of yet, but. To the south, there's also kind of a newer residential community. Along Queen Street, you'll see kind of a couple commercial uses here and there, but certainly more of that kind of older residential character. So the application for the property, there's an official plan amendment and a zoning bylaw amendment proposed. Kevin will get into detail about the designation, but I'll just kind of preface that with what the existing designation is. So it's the official plan actually currently designates the property residential, and the secondary plan designates the property. Let me get the name of the exact designation here. Residential Springbrook Settlement Area. So essentially, the overall parent official plan permits largely residential on residential designated lands, but it also contemplates that there will be some kind of limited, more local serving commercial uses, subject to secondary plan policies that permit these uses. So we look to the Credit View, or the, I always forget the name of the secondary plan. But the secondary plan designation, it permits the residential uses on the property, but it's not permitting the commercial uses on the property. So the official plan amendment relates to permission for some of those commercial uses on the property, and then To go with that, a zoning bylaw amendment is also proposed to permit a range of those local serving commercial uses on the property. There's two, I'll just flash forward to the site plan here. So you can see Queen along the bottom and Credit View along the left side. It's for two retail blocks, one with 5 retail units in the north-south direction and 7 retail units above that. 48 parking spaces proposed, including 4 barrier-free spaces, and to permit a range of commercial uses that you would see in a typical neighborhood setting. This would include small takeout or dine-in restaurants, bakery, maybe a specialty food store, small retail establishments, and those more service commercial uses such as a dry cleaner or perhaps a laundromat. These are the uses that are described and defined in the city zoning bylaw, and those were the uses that are proposed for the subject lands. Back to the more of a summary of the development proposal. I mentioned it's 12 retail units proposed. Each unit kind of in this setting is approximately 1,200 square feet or so. So not huge retail units, but certainly good in terms of that local serving retail. There's 2 accesses to the site proposed. The access off of Queen Street is proposed to be a right-in, right-out only access. So you would only be able to enter the site from Queen Street if you were going west along Queen and then making a right into the site. You'd only be able to use that exit if you wanted to go west along Queen. The Credit View access would be full movement, so you'd be able to move left and right. And you'd be able to come into the site from the north or the south along Credit View. There's landscaping proposed around the perimeter of the site. This will be subject, of course, to a future site plan application where those elements of landscaping, bicycle parking, or the design and look of the buildings will be subject to comment and refinement through that process. But you can see here that landscaping is proposed, and the intent is also through the site plan process to address matters such as, clearly marked areas for pedestrians to walk, including bicycle parking, and kind of refining those details about what the landscaping will look like. Here's more of kind of a graphic rendering coming out of the urban design brief that was submitted as part of the report. And you can see the image on the right is showing the circulation through the site. The arrows represent kind of the directional traffic, and the dotted line arrows is the pedestrian movements through the site. And along the bottom you see, and the left you see the transit routes. So Zooms comes in front of the property as well as one of the other Brampton transit routes. So the property is well served. Overall, this is an area that is, in my opinion, not fully served by a lot of commercial uses. My observations is that there's not that much commercial development in here. Certainly providing this commercial development in Springbrook at kind of the main intersection of Credit View and Queen would help to fulfill those objectives of the secondary plan, as well as the ongoing tertiary plan study that's happening at the city right now to add those commercial uses in Springbrook. And perhaps now I'll pass it along to Kevin.
Thank you very much, David. Kevin, welcome.
Welcome. Good evening, Madam Chair, committee members, and members of the public. My name is Kevin Freeman, and I'm the development planner responsible for managing the review of this application to amend the official plan and zoning bylaw to permit a commercial development consisting of 2 one-story commercial buildings. This evening, I'll be providing you with a brief overview of the planning policy context and next steps for this application moving forward. The properties are designated residential in the official plan. The residential designation permits predominantly residential land uses, including a full range of dwelling types ranging from single detached dwellings to high-rise apartments. Complementary uses, including commercial uses, may also be permitted subject to specific secondary plan policies or designations. Schedule A2 of the official plan identifies the city's retail structure, which includes regional, district, neighborhood, and convenience retail uses. In this instance, the proposed commercial development is not currently included on Schedule A2, and as such, an official plan amendment is required to identify the proposed convenience retail site. The site is designated residential Springbrook Settlement Area in the Credit Valley Secondary Plan. The Springbrook Settlement Area is a historic crossroad hamlet associated with the agricultural settlement of the area. In accordance with the official plan, limited service commercial, village crafts, and home workshops are permitted in the form of a low-intensity and low-density development that is in keeping with the scale and character of the historic hamlet. Since the secondary plan designation does not permit commercial land uses, an amendment to the secondary plan is required to permit the proposed commercial development. Subject lands are identified as Springbrook Special Study Area on the approved Springbrook Community Block Plan. The Springbrook Settlement Area is located within the Credit Valley Secondary Plan and is comprised of a land area of approximately 12.5 hectares. The Springbrook Settlement Area is identified as a historically settled community with the potential for infill development and enhancement of the hamlet. To further evaluate the future land use potential of the Springbrook Settlement Area, the city has initiated a tertiary plan study to establish a guiding land use plan for future land use and development within Springbrook. The tertiary plan is to provide guidance for natural heritage protection, municipal services, road connections, road network, and stormwater management. The subject lands are currently designated mixed use on the draft tertiary plan for the Springbrook Settlement Area. The historic crossroad of Queen Street West and Credit View Road is intended to be a focal point for a mixed-use center that capitalizes on public transit. The mixed-use designation is intended to accommodate a mix of residential and commercial land uses with street-oriented buildings. The emphasis of the mixed-use designation is to create a commercial and active uses which frame the streetscape and contribute to a community center. The current configuration of the proposed commercial buildings does not maintain the intent of providing street-oriented uses that promote a safe and attractive public realm. The proposal is currently not consistent with the type and scale of development that is currently contemplated for this area. The properties are currently zoned residential Hamlet 1, which does not permit the commercial land use that is currently proposed, and as such, an amendment to the zoning bylaw is required. Through the initial review of the application, staff have identified a few key issues with the proposal. These key issues and any other issues identified throughout the review of the application will be addressed in a future recommendation report. The first key issue is land use. As mentioned earlier, the draft tertiary plan for the Springbrook Settlement Area envisions a mixed-use village at the intersection of Queen Street West and Credit View Road, which represents the core of the community. The current configuration of the proposed commercial buildings does not maintain the intent of providing street-oriented uses that promote a safe and attractive public realm, and therefore the proposal is currently not consistent with the type and scale of development that is contemplated for this area. The second key issue is access. The city and regional staff will need to determine whether the proposed access locations and anticipated traffic implications are acceptable. Internal connections to adjacent land uses are to be considered to better understand potential linkages to surrounding land. Lastly, the third key issue is urban design. City staff will review the urban design brief submitted in support of the application to determine whether the architectural design is appropriate and compatible with the surrounding area. Significant changes are requested to the configuration of the buildings on the site to better orient them to address the adjacent street frontages. With respect to next steps for this application moving forward, I will continue to process the application. We'll be considering all comments received from members of the public and technical experts. The application will be reviewed for consistency with the provincial policy statement and conformity with the growth plan for the Greater Golden Horseshoe and the regional official plan. At a future date, I'll be preparing a recommendation report for consideration of the Planning and Development Committee and Council. My report will include a discussion on any comments, questions, or items of concern that are received from members of the public. All members of the public that provide their contact information for this application will be advised when a future recommendation report will be presented. Thank you, Madam Chair.
Thank you very much, Kevin. At this time, I'd like to invite anybody from the public who wishes to make comments on this proposal. I see somebody here. Did you wish to speak on this item?
Yes.
If you could come forward and state your name for the public record, and anybody else, and perhaps when you're finished speaking, if you could just go over to the side and sign in with your proper name and contact information.
Thank you. Can you
Great.
hear me? Thank you. My name is Gina Rocco Osborne. I've lived at the corner, northeast corner of Queen and Credit View, the actual land that isn't being developed, but it's referred to as the core of Springbrook, the heart of Springbrook. Actually, we're the only people that actually are in Springbrook still there. Our address is 1490 Queen Street West. And lucky for us, in 1954, a very courageous developer built all the houses, some of which will be demolished to put the above development on. He built them all and saved the corner lot for his house. And so our house was his, and ours, we just enlarged it. And I've stayed there as of December 1st, 2018, it will be 52 years. And he put in 2 driveways, one on Queen and one on Credit View, and thank goodness he did, because otherwise, the 10 years of construction would have prevented us from even getting in our own house. We have put up with 18 months of drilling across from us, from the region. We put up with telephones line being closed because people just, when doing construction, we put up with water being put in, and 3 times Queen Street being enlarged. And we put up with it. We even never had transit. And here, lo and behold, in the last 2 years, we have 2, the City of Brampton and the Zoom, when all my kids are grown up and don't use it anymore. I want to address what Springbrook is, because I think very few of you know that it was a very interesting place. And it was a settlement that encompassed all the farmers around there. My parents actually owned the place, the Sorrento, right across from our house, and in the 60s. And all the farmers, that's where they would come, eat their pizza or their ravioli or fish and chips on Friday. So it became the place to go. After it closed, our place became the place to go. Everyone knew that we were always open, always have coffee on, and always had cookies or whatever. We brought up our family there. We also know that at some point we would have to leave. We planted every tree on our property, and now those trees will be gone at some point, and with it, all the wildlife that it's been welcomed there. The reason I'm opposing the development is, first, one is traffic. The city has to recognize that they have not kept up with the infrastructure. They promised when they closed Credit View at Williams Parkway that there would be another road, James Potter. It took 6 years before it was finished. And we paid the price because that meant the traffic still keeps going north on Credit View and south. We were told in 2008, I remember John Hutton proposing, and I thought I'd been accepted, that Credit View was going to be a historical road. Well, this historical road has 2 buses that go up and down, and many, many cars. So traffic is very much a concern. If development is to happen, and I'm not anti-development, it has to happen in conjunction with the whole of the corner. You can't take my property and encircle it by a plaza. So I'm going to be a house being surrounded by a plaza. The gentleman, the developer, suggested to me my property is going to be worth more afterwards. No, it will not. He will have taken most of what makes our property valuable out of it, because trees will be affected, and it will be incredible, the noise that we will have to put up with. I don't think that this council ever meant to do this. Remember, Brampton was the rose, the city of roses, of flowers. And what we've done, we're turning it into city of stores, little stores, not even having meanings. In 2008, I was on Ward 6 committee.
Gina, I don't like to interrupt you, but
I know.
we do have
I'm
a
going to say one
5-minute
thing,
limit,
that 2008, the proposal for Springbrook was far different that what we had today. And I know I'm speaking, perhaps taking time from others, but I waited 52 years to be heard. I want to know that if development is going to go, you can't change every time council change. You can't change every time a planner changes. You give us all something to look for, and then those plans are changed. That's what I wanted to say. So before you vote, do your homework, look at what that meant, and why should one house be divided? Because the developer has not got the courage to tell us the truth, and to pay what it's worth. Thank you.
Thank you, Gina. And I do want to clarify for everybody that the statutory public meeting portion of the development process is at the very beginning of the process. It is when we invite members of the public to either make a verbal or written submissions to the city, and all of the concerns need to be responded to in the final staff recommendation report, which will come at some point in the future, and you'll be notified of that. Gina, thank you for your presentation this evening. Are there any other folks in attendance this evening that wish to speak on this application? Seeing none, I'll ask, yes, I'm the area councillor, so I'll let Councillor Bowman, would you like to move receipt of the applicant presentation, the staff presentation, and the delegation this evening? All those in favor? That's carried. Thank you. The next item on the agenda is item 4.6. 4.5? Oh, I'm sorry. Yes, 4.5. I thought I was moving along faster than I was, actually. It's an application to amend the zoning bylaw to permit 2 hotels, a banquet hall, and office retail uses. The applicant is Henry Chu, architect, on behalf of 194-2411 Ontario Incorporated. The location is 2009 Steeles Avenue West and 7920 Mississauga Road, north of Embleton Road between Heritage Road and Mississauga Road in Ward 6. Is anyone here this evening who wishes to hear a submission from the applicant and a presentation from city staff regarding this proposal? Is anybody in attendance this evening that wishes to see an applicant presentation and a staff presentation? Okay. For the folks that just came in the room, I've introduced the applicant and the application this evening. Did you wish to see a presentation from the applicant or a presentation from staff this evening? If anybody does, please just wave your hand in the air. Okay, let the record show that no one attending this statutory public meeting requested an applicant submission, staff presentation, or requested to speak on this matter. Does the applicant wish to make a presentation to committee this evening?
No, thank you.
No, thank you. Let the record show that the applicant declined the opportunity to make a submission to committee on this matter. Do any members of the committee have questions of city staff for clarification only on the proposal? Seeing none, someone like to move the report to Chip and Dale over there in the corner. Councillor, who did I do the last time? Councillor Palashi? Councillor Willens, it must be your turn. All those in favor? That's carried. Thank you. The next item is item 4.6. To amend this, it's an application to amend the zoning bylaw to permit the development of 2 apartment buildings, 12 and 26 stories in height, containing approximately 384 residential units. The applicant owner is Glenn Schnarr and Associates on behalf of Investor Group Trust Company Limited. The location is 2 and 4 Hanover Road in Ward 7. Is anyone here this evening who wishes to hear a submission from the applicant and presentation from city staff regarding this proposal? I knew there would be hands up in the air for this one. So I'll give everybody an opportunity to perhaps find a seat. And I'll invite Bruce McCall Richmond, planner from Glenn Schnarr and Associates, to do the first part of the presentation. Welcome, Bruce.
Hello. Okay, good evening, Madam Chair and members of the committee. My name is Bruce McCall Richmond. I am a planner with Glenn Schnarr and Associates. I'm here tonight on behalf of Investors Group Trust Company Limited, registered owners of the property located at 2 and 4 Hanover Road, with respect to an application to amend the zoning bylaw to permit the addition of 2 new residential rental apartment buildings. The property is located on the northwest corner of Queen Street East and Central Park Drive. The property measures 4 hectares or 9.87 acres. The property currently contains 2 existing residential rental apartment buildings of 18 and 22 stories in height. As illustrated on the slide before you now, surrounding land uses are mixed and include existing residential uses to the north and west, recreational uses to the east, and commercial, transportation, and institutional uses to the south. This slide shows an image of the proposed redevelopment of the property. Located on the west and south sides of the property, and shown in a darker blue, are the 2 new residential buildings proposed. Shown in light blue are the existing buildings 2 and 4 Hanover Road, which are 18 and 22 stories in height. Proposed building C is sited nearest the Queen Street East frontage, is 26 stories in height, and contains 50 one-bedroom units, 50 one-bedroom plus den units, 100 two-bedroom units, and 50 two-bedroom plus den units, for a total of 250 new rental units. Building D is sited nearest the property's westerly lot line, is 12 stories in height, and contains 14 one-bedroom units, 54 one-bedroom plus den units, 13 two-bedroom units, and 41 two-bedroom plus den units, for a total of 134 new rental units. Through the addition of the new buildings, we are also providing for the comprehensive redevelopment, improvement, and renewal of the property. New indoor and outdoor amenity areas, walkways, landscape areas, and new connections are provided for. The existing vehicular access from Hanover Road will be maintained and improved, and the expansion of the underground parking areas will facilitate the increased parking space allocation anticipated. This is an aerial rendering image looking northwest, illustrating the configuration of the existing and new buildings proposed, along with a preliminary design of the road and walkways. This slide shows the proposed 12-story building D in the forefront, nearest the westerly lot line. The existing 22-story building, 4 Hanover Road, and the proposed 26-story building, building C at the rear. And here we have another summary of the proposal. So through the addition of the new buildings, the combined unit count will be 989 residential rental units for a total site density of 247 units per hectare. The density proposed conforms with the official plan and secondary plan, and as such, the only planning application required is the zoning bylaw amendment application before you here tonight. The proposal is consistent with provincial policies and citywide initiatives for accommodating future growth in a built-up area, intensification along transit corridors, and the utilization of existing services. Queen Street is recognized by the region and city as a higher-order transit corridor and the property is part of a targeted intensification area intended to accommodate growth. I would also like to note that while this is the first statutory meeting being held with respect to the application, the owners have been active in the community and have held private building-only meetings with the tenant representative group and tenants. This proposal was also reviewed by the city's design review panel, and their input was considered prior to the formal application being filed with the city. Furthermore, key studies, including the traffic impact assessment, urban design brief, have been prepared in support of the proposal and are currently being reviewed by the region, city, and other governmental agencies as part of the application review process. As the process moves forward, we would be happy to answer any questions you may have or to meet to discuss the application in further detail. Thank you for your time, and I believe Carmen will now be giving a presentation.
Thank you very much, Bruce.
Yep.
Welcome, Carmen.
Good evening, Madam Chair, committee members, ladies and gentlemen. My name is Carmen Crusoe, and I am the Central Area Planner for the city, responsible for managing the review of this application to amend the zoning bylaw to permit the addition of 2 high-rise buildings to the property at 2 and 4 Hanover Road. The applicant has described the proposal for the development application, and now I will briefly describe the policy and land use context, the preliminary issues, and the next steps. The lands are designated central area in the official plan. The central area is a part of the city where investment and intensification permitting a wide range of office, retail, commercial, and service activities are expected. A range of institutional and residential land uses are permitted within the central area. An official plan amendment is not required to facilitate this proposal. The property is designated high-density residential in the Queen Street Corridor Secondary Plan. Generally, residential designations in this secondary plan are intended to recognize areas developed for residential purposes, already developed for residential purposes, including this site. The density requirement allowed by the secondary plan on this property is 247 units per hectare, and the applicant's proposal is consistent with the density requirements for the property. An amendment to the secondary plan is not required for this proposal. The property is zoned for an apartment use that permits one 22-story building with a maximum of 324 units and an 18-story building with a maximum of 281 units. The zoning also indicates the location of the buildings, landscaping, and accessory buildings and reflects what currently exists on the property. A zoning bylaw amendment is required to add additional buildings and units to the site. A number of preliminary issues have been identified through the initial review of this application. These include the appropriateness of the arrangement of the buildings and the distribution of the density on the site, the suitability of the number of access points to the site, the impact of how the additional units will impact traffic in the area, and the potential for flooding on the lands. After tonight's public meeting, comments received from the city departments, After tonight's public meeting, comments received from city departments, agencies, members of the public who submitted correspondence, as well as members of the public who make a submission this evening. Any matters that are raised at this meeting will be addressed in a further recommendation report. The proposal will be further assessed against provincial policy statement, the Greater Golden Horseshoe Growth Plan, the Regional Official Plan, and the City's Official Plan and Secondary Plan. Once analysis and evaluation is completed, staff will return to the Planning and Development Committee with a recommendation report. The recommendation report will address all matters raised by members of the public, external agencies, and other city departments. Anyone that provides their contact information with respect to this application will be advised when the recommendation report will be forwarded for consideration by the committee. Thank you. This concludes my presentation.
Thank you very much for the presentations this evening. Are there any members of the public who wish to come forward and make comments this evening? And if you do, then I'd ask you to sign in with Vanna over there waving. If you could sign, you have 5 minutes to make your presentation this evening. So if you'd like to line up and sign in and then come to the podium to speak. Councillor Fortuny, there'll be an opportunity after the presentations for members of committee. Good evening and welcome. If you could state your name for the public record, and you'll have 5 minutes to make your presentation.
Certainly, Madam Chair. Thank you very much.
Thank
My
you.
name is Richard Gauthier. I live at 18 Hartnell Square. There are two issues that I'd like to raise with this proposal. The first has to do with the height of the 26-story apartment building and its impact on the surrounding residents. I was told tonight that there is a shadow report that has been done, and that the proposed building would have no effect on the surrounding residents. I would like to challenge that. The Hartnell Square is right across the street from 2 and 4 Hanover. There are 70 units within that square. I'm at number 18. The buildings in question would be just south, probably south-southeast to be more precise, of the Hartnell Square. This morning, to everybody's joy, there was some sun, so it was a very good time to have a look at exactly what effect, in the presence of the sun and the shadow, would have on the surrounding residents. I have taken pictures that I can share with you, but it's obvious that yes, there will be an impact from the height of that building onto the residents that are right across the street. It won't be an impact for the whole day, but it will be an impact for the hours in the morning, okay? Now, how much value do we put on 2-3 hours of sun? I don't know. But there's no doubt that every hour lost of sunlight has an adverse impact on the mental well-being and physical well-being of the people living there. There's no doubt about it. The second point that I'd like to raise concerns the resulting density from the proposed buildings. I'm not sure that the traffic impact study has taken into consideration the amount of activities that take place at the Chinguacousy Park, which is just at the northeast corner of the proposed buildings. One of the slides there was very misleading. You get the impression that it's wide open there, but it's right across the street from the proposed developments. The Chinguacousy Park is used all year round, and the City of Brampton has really invested a lot in recent years into Chinguacousy Park. And to everyone's joy, it is being used tremendously. Not just once in a while, it is being used continuously. And on weekends, it is packed. There are literally hundreds and hundreds of people using that park. You just finished putting in a skating rink. It's also being used in the winter, so it is used tremendously. The amount of traffic is already risky for children and family accessing the park through Hanover. There's more than one access to the park, but a lot of them do use the Hanover access. The city has extended the parking for that's near the Hanover access just last year, but this nowhere goes far enough to meet the needs. Very often parking is done on the street. The increase in density will only make the matters worse. I realize that, and as it was mentioned earlier, I understand that intensification of Queen Street might be an objective, but that doesn't imply that the intensification has to occur all at the same corner. okay? So there's already a tremendous amount of activities that are going on because of the park that is just right across the street from there. And this will just simply add to the flow of traffic and density that's there. Thank you, Madam Chair.
Thank you very much, Mr. Gauthier. I just want staff to clarify that all of the studies and reports that are available to us are also available on the website for members of the public to review.
That is right, Madam Chair. In advance of the public meeting tonight, staff was sure to post all of the documentation that's received in support of these applications from the applicants, the owners, on the city's website so that they're all available to the public.
Okay.
That's right.
Great. Thank you very much. The next delegate, if you could state your name for the public record, and you have 5 minutes.
Thank you, Madam Chair. Councilors, my name is Scott Smith. I live in the area, and Richard took a lot of my thunder, what I was going to say, so I will be succinct in what I have to say to you. My major concern is the safety of the children that live in this area. There is a crosswalk right in front of the building, our building. I live at 24 Hanover. And it is guarded some days, of course, when school is in, and most of the time it is not. And the amount of traffic that goes by there is very concerning to me. And that is my main objective coming here to talk to you tonight, is about the schools in that area that are, until 2021, are full. And this is research that the councilor and you, Madam Chair, can to look at, and won't be available to have any excess until 2027. So when you're looking at these applications, Richard did a great job of what other things I was going to say. But it's basically the safety for our children in this area. And as a grandfather, it's a great concern of mine. And I would like you to consider that when you consider this application. It's too many people. Thank you very much.
Thank you very much, Scott. Welcome. If you could state your name, and you have 5 minutes.
Good evening. My name is Stuart Sheffer. I live at 24 Hanover, and I also am concerned about the density of the amount of people that will be living in the area. They'll be almost doubling the amount of people in the buildings that are there now, and the traffic is already marginally tolerable. Along with the children that will be put into the area, the traffic, and the major concern is the amount of footprint that these buildings will be taking up on the land will not leave sufficient land for the people to enjoy the building and the grounds that they're building on. I don't know if there is any specifics about the amount of square footage that a building can take up on apartment land, but looking at the units, because I live there, I would say that once you got your parking lot there, there'll be nothing for entertainment for the people living in the building. They'll be looking elsewhere for their entertainment, and there is nothing there. So I think the council should consider what is available across the road, and maybe take a look at doubling the population in one area. One small area is not going to help it at all. It's only going to be a hindrance. That's about all I can say for now. The last little bit is, I believe that 22 stories was a maximum allowed on this property, and yet they're proposing 26 stories. How that happened, I'll never know, but I'll be watching. Thank you.
Thank you, Stuart. Our next delegate this evening, if you could state your name, please.
Thank you very much. My name is Ankul Kumar. I am a resident of 20 Hartnell Square, just across the road where we have this proposed site of construction. I've been living in the community since about 6 years now. The most of the points that I wanted to mention, I think, have already been mentioned by Richard and others. But there's one more thing I would like to mention. I used to live as a tenant in one of these buildings, 2 Hanover, for 3 years, and in 2015, I bought a house just across the road. I think it has already been mentioned that this is a higher density population location. I don't see a reason why we further want to increase the density of people over here. I must tell you that I have been a very cautious driver throughout my life, and I think I am one of the highest auto insurance payer in this town. It's hard for me to find an insurance company that can give me an auto insurance less than $300. Probably the culprit is this particular location, Queen Street and Central Park. We just cannot afford more people over here. It's very accident-prone intersection. About this particular residential community, 2 and 4 Hanover, earlier it was under Minto management. We see the quality of management going down. Then it was handed over to Vertica management. The quality of service went further down. It went so down that eventually we decided to move out of that community and move elsewhere. And that's when we bought our house. If that's the reason, and if that's the level of maintenance over there, I am not sure how will it improve if we construct 2 more facilities over there and increase the number of people. So I think the last thing that should come at this particular location is a residential building. Maybe it may qualify for some other construction that would make life of residents better, but it should not be a rental building. Thank you.
Thank you for your presentation this evening. We have another delegate. Welcome. If you could state your name, and you have 5 minutes.
Hey, my name is Jeff Como. I live just in Northern, and the house is there. My address is 7 Hunters Cove. And I'm just going to highlight what the other people say. I totally agree. I am concerned about the sunlight in the morning, the traffic that's going to come about with these apartments. I don't understand why they have to put 2 more in. Like, the density is already a lot there with the traffic and all that. So just like I said, I want to highlight exactly what they said, and I find it interesting how you're going to have about 1,200 cars using one entrance to get out of this place too. I want to highlight that. So I am totally opposed to this development happening, and I hope you guys think long and hard and take everything in consideration when thinking about doing this and going forward. Thank you.
Thank you very much. We have another delegation this evening. If you could state your name, welcome.
Hello, my name is Sylvia. I'm a resident of Ward 3, so I'm not directly adjacent to this, but I live in the city. You probably are aware of this, but Brampton has a very low vacancy rate for rentals. Last year, CMHC said it was 1.3 for one bedrooms, which is what this is predominantly going to be. If you want to keep young people in Brampton, we have to actually have a place to live. Well, I suppose we could live in one of the many basement apartments in the city, but you don't want that because it's dangerous. Or we could live in an actual building that the city has put plans in place so we would have access to things. It's right next to a nice park. I believe everyone here would agree Chinguacousy Park is a nice park. It's right by the Bramalea Transit Hub. And with the BRT going in, it will have excellent access, which would make it easier for people to get downtown to the train station so we can get to Toronto, or we could take it into York, and there would be subway access there, so it would give young people a place to actually live. There's amenities there, and we need housing in the city. So if you have a requirement for the places to grow to add more housing, so you can add it here, where its actual neighbors are going to be apartment buildings, or you can have a developer come along, like, hi, we want to buy these houses, we're going to tear them down and put an apartment building, where there wasn't one previously. Having this will allow you to help satisfy that while minimizing the impact. People are concerned about shade, and that's very understandable. The issue is you have to come up with places along this. By putting it next to apartment buildings, it will minimize the impact, and because it's close to transit, will reduce the amount of traffic. If you really want, because traffic seems to be a huge concern, you could talk to the developer. Section 40, I believe, is you can waive the parking requirement in exchange for funds, and you can use it for cash. You can have cash, and one of the permitted uses is transit. The BRT isn't cheap, so you can use it to pay towards that, which would directly benefit the people here in this building, in these buildings proposed. Thank you for your time.
Sylvia, thank you for your comments this evening. Our next delegate this evening. Hello and welcome. If you could state your name, please.
Hi, good evening. My name is Girish Pawar. I'm the resident of 57 Hartnell Square in this property. Well, I think everybody has covered all their the points which are important in this. Well, I wouldn't take enough time here, but I would just like to mention you that when we moved into this property, ma'am, we saw this place as a very beautiful and a very peaceful, calm place to live in. And as you see, most of our residents here, they are mostly 70% of them are elderly. We live there as a peaceful community there. Ma'am, I would just like to say that we just want this place to be peaceful and safe. So, seeing any kind of changes, I would just see a trouble coming our way. So that's it, ma'am. I just want everything to be same. That's it. Okay, thanks.
Thank you very much for your presentation. I want to assure everybody that your comments are being recorded and will be reported on and addressed in the staff report. We have another delegate this evening. Hello, good evening, welcome. If you could state your name, please.
Yes, I presently live at 4 Hanover Road, and I am not opposed to this development because there's a lot of wasted land, and I am surprised they haven't done this years ago because it's not being maintained, so there might as well be something on it that will get some residual pleasure to somebody. And concerning the schools, there is a crossing guard morning and afternoon, so the children do not have to cross the street without the crossing guard. And I just think it would be enhance the area, make it much better. Thank you.
I'm sorry, thank you. Could you state your name for the record, please?
Oh, I'm sorry. I'm Donna Young
It's nice
from
to
4 Hanover Road, apartment 810.
Thank you. I got your address. I just didn't get your name. Thank you very much. We have another delegation this evening. Hello and welcome.
Hi, welcome. Chad Mills is my name. I just wanted to get more insight on what implications this might have on the school zoning, because I can't see the school there, Hanover Public School, being able to handle all the new population that's going to be there. So will students have to go to another school via bus, or what will happen there? Also, as some of the people already said, that crosswalk there is very busy. My daughter actually goes there every day because she takes the bus to another school for French immersion. And it's very dangerous there. There's a lot of cars still going through while there are crossing guards there. And I still have to walk her every day to make sure she gets across safely. So just more information on the zoning for the school.
Chad, thank you. And the school boards are commenting agencies, and will have to provide their comments on how they would accommodate the students. It'll be addressed in the staff report. Thank you. If there are no further presentations this evening, welcome.
Thank you.
If anybody else wishes to speak, maybe you could sign in ahead of time. When you're finished,
I'll sign in afterwards.
you're doing it backwards. If you could state your name, please.
Maybe I should leave that to the very end, too.
You could do
So
that
the
if
whole
you
thing
wish.
is backwards.
Sure. We'll start the
Madam-
clock at 5 and go backwards then instead of counting up.
Madam Chairman, it's a privilege to be able to comment. Of all of those who have spoken to this proposal, for and against it, I'm not sure I disagree with any of them. I think the points have been very well made. Again, for those for and against it. One of the things that the developer mentioned that has not been asked at this point is that the entrance and the re-entrance, the entrance into the development will be adjusted to allow for 50% more traffic. And I don't know how that can be done as I see that diagram there. It looks as if there's still a double road coming in, one with passes, one that have to go to the gate first, and there's a double road going out. To me, that does not allow for the extra traffic, so I'd like to see that addressed. The other thing that I would like to see on paper is compared with what is currently there, the number of occupants versus the number of open area, green space. They have, I don't know, 4 or 5 barbecues there now. Oh, by the way, I live at 95 Hartnell Square. That's in the shadow of Building A, and when you put another building directly behind that and to the west, it is going to affect the shadow. I don't know who did that study, but if you extend Building A, it's got to affect the shadow. And so again, these are some things that I think the committee needs to look at and come back with some answers. So it's Malcolm Warner at 95 Hartnell Square, and I haven't heard the 0 bell go. Thank you.
You did great. 3 minutes and 1 second. Thank you for your presentation. Do we have another delegation this evening? You can do it backwards, too.
Why not, eh? My name is Marv Patel, and I live at 22 Hanover Raceway. And I say that because the traffic is extremely heavy. The traffic coming down Dixie Road takes a shortcut to bypass the Queen Street and Dixie Road intersection. We get a tremendous number of cars coming down there and at high rates of speed. And I can say that is true because I had people from the bylaws over there with their radar gun, and I sat in the car with them, and I told Pat Fortini about this a long time ago, and I actually recorded 81 to 95 kilometers an hour through a 40-kilometer zone with cars racing and passing in the crosswalk area. So it's an extremely dangerous situation there right now. The lady said, well, there's a crosswalk there. You know, 50% of the people with kids, they don't pay any attention to the crosswalk. They walk across the street anyway. They show their children how to jaywalk. And it's amazingly dangerous for all this to happen. And after all of the survey I did with the bylaw people and all the correspondence back and forth, I still don't see any police presence. At one point in time, they put up a sign that said 40 kilometers an hour, and it flashed if you exceeded that. They couldn't put it on the other side of the street, go in the other direction, because there were no hydro poles. I mean, in this day and age, with this technology, you know, I couldn't get that done. I worked on it for quite a while, and I finally gave up. But it's a really, really dangerous situation, and adding another 300 and whatever it is apartments with all those kids, and that traffic, if the traffic isn't controlled, you're asking for trouble. Thank you very much. My name is Marv Hattelt, and I'm from 22 Hanover Raceway.
Marv, if I could ask you to sign in.
I will.
Please. As long as one of those speeders wasn't Councillor Fortini. Are there any other delegations this evening? Seeing none, I'll ask for the area councillor to move I understand we'll get there. I'll move receipt of the applicant presentation, the staff presentation, and all the delegations this evening. And we had some 4 items of correspondence. Councillor Fortini has moved all of those. All those in favor? That's carried. And now Councillor Fortini has a question.
Yeah, just like, sorry, through the chair, just to staff. So when I met with the planner, Colin Chong, over a year and a half ago, I was told they were already only allowed 22 stories here, and the 3 buildings were supposed to be connected. So how did we get 2 buildings and one 26 stories? Because that's all that was allowed, is a 22-story building. And that's what I was told that was gonna come there a year and a half ago. And one of the residents did mention it, and I remember that's exactly what we were told back then, myself and Councillor Miles. And all three buildings were supposed to be connected, so they could walk from one building to another with a new gym and everything. And so I don't see that on the drawings here. So
So through you, Madam
Mr.
Chair,
Parsons?
the reference to the 22-story height of the building maximum, that may be a current reference in the existing zoning bylaw. This is a zoning bylaw amendment application. They're proposing changes to the bylaw to accommodate what is shown here and referenced here today. With respect to a previous iteration, configuration of the site, which showed the buildings in some different pattern with some connections and such, I can't speak to that myself. It is often that applicants, owners, they look at a couple of different possibilities in advance of the submission of the application. So what I can just really confirm is that what we are seeing here today is the current form of development that is being pursued by the owner, and they may have abandoned some other previous iteration.
Hello, second. So the traffic impact, was it already done?
Through you, Madam Chair, there is a traffic impact statement that is provided with the application.
Okay, well, through the chair, I cannot support this anyway at the time, and I'll bring it up.
Councillor
again
Fertini,
at the time, so.
Councillor Vertini, we can't comment on the application at this point. We need to be very cautious that we don't express any perceived bias on the application at this stage of the application. Councillor Medeiros.
Thank you for the chair. Just regarding the traffic impact study, how will it be impacted based on our decision regarding rapid transit? I guess sorry, I'll speak more into the microphone. Regarding the traffic, and this is more of a general, it's not specific to this application, but the traffic impact studies that will ensue based on plans for a Queen Street corridor, would they have to be revised after, or is that sort of information shared with the applicants?
So through you, Madam Chair, I can't speak in detail really to the details in which the way in which a traffic impact study will be reviewed by our technical experts in our traffic division. But I can generally state that they'll be reviewing the document, and that document would have been prepared with certain assumptions and anticipating what's called a modal split, really the divide between how many people tend to get in their cars and drive around versus those that perhaps would walk, use transit, etc. And that would be understood in a certain way. A certain calculation would be appropriated in that way. And I believe as well generally that really the plans that the city has with respect to busing and improvement of services, that would be taken into consideration as well.
Yeah, and I guess through the chair, I guess where and thank you for your response, is that all the applications coming forth, once I think we sort of get a handle what we're going to do with the Queen Street corridor, I think there will be some impact, and there would have to be some revised planning for the applicants. So I'm just wondering in terms of the process. I don't need an answer, but it's just, I appreciate that there is that thought process going into it. Thank you.
Thank you very much. Councillor Medeiros, I guess at this point I take a motion from the area councillor to approve the staff report. Okay. Councillor Fortini, did you wish to move that? All those in favor? That's carried. Thank you very much. And thank you everyone for coming this evening on that application. Our next application is item 4.7. I'll just give you a minute to file out. Are there other folks out there that want to come in for the next one? Okay. We're just going to wait a few moments. There's some folks out in the hallway, I understand, for item 4.7. So before I introduce it, I'd like to give them an opportunity to come into the temporary chambers. Hello and welcome, everybody. We've now reached item 4.7 on the agenda. It is an application to amend the zoning bylaw to permit the development of a 17-story apartment building containing approximately 358 units. The applicant owner is Gagnon Walker Domes on behalf of JTS Properties Incorporated. The location is 80 Scott Street and it's in Ward 1. I'm going to assume that there are folks here who wish to hear a submission from the applicant and a presentation from city staff regarding this proposal. Just wave your hand in your air. Thank you. So at this point, I will invite Mark Denardis forward from GWD Professional Planners to do the presentation on behalf of the applicant. Welcome, Mark.
Good evening, Madam Chair, members of the committee, members of the public. My name is Mark Denardis. I'm a planning associate from Gagnon Walker Domes Urban Planners. My office acts as project planner to JTS Properties, Inc., the owner of 80 Scott Street. We have been retained to provide land use planning consulting services in connection with the redevelopment proposal on the subject property. I'm accompanied here tonight by Mr. Michael Gagnon, who's the managing principal planner of our office, as well as Rod Robotham from One Space Architects. Should be making this, yeah. The property has a total area of approximately 0.89 hectares with a frontage of 100 meters along the east side of Scott Street. The property is situated approximately 100 meters north of Church Street. It is currently occupied by the Scottwood Towers rental apartment, which was constructed in 1962 and is approaching 60 years in age. This building measures 6 stories in height, consisting of 79 units and 82 at-grade parking spaces. The property is relatively flat, with a gradual decrease in grade to the west towards the Etobicoke Creek. The property is located within a long-established residential neighborhood that is located in the periphery of the downtown. Abutting lands consist predominantly of single detached dwellings. The immediate area to the southwest does, however, also consist of as many as 5 multi-story apartment buildings that are within 30 to 50 years of age. The Etobicoke Creek runs in a north-south direction west of the property. In close proximity to the subject site are a number of public parks, schools, and open spaces, including the Dugan Park, Ken Willans Drive Park, Central Public School Park, Scott Street Parkette, and Rosalie Park. The local road network consists of 3 roadways, including Church Street, Center Street, and Ken Willans Drive. By way of background, our office filed a pre-consultation application on March 21st, 2014. On June 2nd, 2017, our office filed a formal amendment application to amend the official plan and zoning bylaw to permit the redevelopment of the property for a multi-story residential apartment. The application was deemed complete by the Planning Department on August 21st, 2018. A formal notice of complete application was issued on October 5th, 2018. The proposed building is designed in a U-shaped footprint. Using a combination of setbacks and stepbacks, the building transitions on 3 different planes towards the west elevation. It is proposed that the lower 7 stories will be clad in precast cladding and glazing, with the balance of the stories comprising primarily of glass curtain wall. The building is accessed by 2 entrances that form a U-shaped driveway. An underground parking facility is accessed via the same driveway beneath the center of the building. The front and rear yards are to be landscaped as passive open space areas. Rooftop terraces are an opportunity for shared amenity space. The proposed building has a total of 17 stories, a total of 358 units consisting of 1, 2, and 3 bedroom units, a total floor space index of 4.0, a density of approximately 416 units per net hectare, and approximately 460 below-grade parking spaces. We wish to advise that the owner and the project team did host an open house meeting in June, and 15 to 25 local residents attended this meeting. There was a positive and healthy exchange of input, comments, and ideas and recommendations. A second open house meeting was hosted by the owner in July with the tenants of the existing apartment building, and approximately 25 to 30 tenants did attend that meeting as well. Attendees at both meetings were advised of the ongoing public consultation process that includes this evening, and that the project remains an evolving concept. The project's tenure has not been finalized. And a number of technical studies have been filed in support of the application, and the proposal has been reviewed from the perspective of conformity with the general intent of the governing planning documents. Redevelopment of the property will achieve an intensified and compact form on an underutilized site, focus transit-supportive development within the existing built-up area that is compact, add to the local range and mix of housing, promote efficient use of infrastructure and public service facilities, add potential ridership to the public transit system, and add to the built-form attractiveness of the site in the local area. Mr. Carmen Caruso, of the Central Area Planner, will now highlight the governing planning policy and the land use amendment applications. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Mark. Welcome, Carmen.
Good evening again, Madam Chair, committee members, and ladies and gentlemen. Again, my name is Carmen Caruso. I am the Central Area Planner for the city who is responsible for managing the review of this application to amend the official plan and zoning bylaw for a high-rise building stepping to 17 stories. The proposal has been described by the applicant, and now I will discuss the land use policy context, preliminary issues, and the next steps. The lands are designated residential in the official plan. This designation permits predominantly residential uses and allows a full range of dwelling types from single detached homes to high-rise apartments. Conceptually, in the official plan, the property is located within an anchor mobility hub. The anchor mobility hub has a strategic, regional, and interregional importance in its ability to anchor a regional transportation system which provides connections across the Greater Toronto and Hamilton area. The Anchor Mobility Hub is expected to accommodate the highest combined jobs and people per hectare and is expected to achieve a floor space index of 4 over the entire area. An amendment to the official plan is not required to facilitate this proposal. The property is designated high density in the Brampton Flower Town secondary plan, which permits a maximum residential density of 200 units per residential acre, which the applicant proposes to exceed. Therefore, a secondary plan amendment is required to permit the increase in density and to include site-specific policies to guide development on the property. The existing zoning on the property permits a building with a maximum height of 12 stories and a floor space index of 1. Since the applicant is exceeding the height and the floor space index on the property, an amendment to the zoning bylaw is required. A number of preliminary issues have been identified through the initial review of this proposal and include the appropriateness of the built form and density and how it integrates with the surrounding low-density housing, how the increase in the number of units will impact existing traffic patterns, how the impact of potentially removing rental dwelling units and the effect on the city's minimum vacancy rates, and how potential flooding may impact the development of the lands. After tonight's public meeting, comments received from city departments, agencies, members of the public, including those that make representation this evening, will be evaluated and addressed. The proposal will be further assessed against the provincial policy statement, the Greater Golden Horseshoe, the growth plan, the regional official plan, the city official plan, and the Brampton Flower Town secondary plan. Once the analysis and evaluation of of the application is completed, staff will return to Planning and Development Committee with a recommendation report. The recommendation report will address all matters raised by members of the public, external agencies, and city departments. Anyone that provides their contact information with respect to this application will be advised when a recommendation report will be forwarded to the committee. Thank you. That concludes my presentation.
Thank you very much, Carmen. It's at this point that we'll entertain delegations from the public. So anybody who wishes to speak on the application, if you could sign in over at the side, and then come forward and state your name for the public record, and you'll have 5 minutes to speak. And I'd like to remind everybody who has joined us here for this application that we are at the very beginning of this application formal process. So it's at this point that you have an opportunity to state your concerns and make your comments for the public record, and they will be recorded and responded to in the staff report. Okay? Hello and welcome.
That's good to know. My name is Doug Berry. I live at 80 Scott Street. And I'd like to make one comment and suggestion. First off, those who aren't aware, Premier Ford is intent on eliminating rent controls on new apartment buildings. So you can hear the old Temperman smash up ball winding up, because there's going to be a lot of old stock apartments coming down to make way so these rents can go up. This place I've been in for 11 years. There's people here that have been there longer, and I was hoping it'd be my last place, but that's not their problem, that's mine. But secondly, I'd like to draw your attention, and I don't know if this is the proper forum or not, but I would like it on record for the edification of JTS Properties and their legal representatives, that under the Landlord and Tenant Act, they are to give us, those of us who are left, they are to give us 4 months' notice of eviction, and it doesn't specify when, but we are supposed to get 3 months' rent to help offset that. I'm here to say that being a retiree on a fixed income and no increases in 10 years, I still unfortunately do not qualify for assistance. But I'll say this, that this puts us out in the market where I can no longer, I was told by Peel Living of all places on the side that maybe I should be looking outside the region because I'm looking for a place for retirement. I was going to be here. All right, well, that's not there. Again, I understand Progress, he's the owner, he could do almost what he wants with the place. All right, but I want it in the record that in my opinion, I will not accept the notice of eviction that is not accompanied by 3 months' rent. And I will litigate on that point if it requires that. Because I've done a little cursory research and found situations like this where people play games, let's put it that way. Not that he would. I'm not saying that. I'm just saying I want to be upfront, ahead of the curve. Thank you.
Thank you, Doug. And I just want to, confirm that staff's role in this application is to evaluate the application under the Planning Act and other pieces of legislation, that there are other matters, and it's recognized that may exist between the owner and some of the tenancies that may be on the property, but staff will not be able to address those in the staff report. But appreciate you raising them. You have them on the public record. Thank you. Hello, good evening.
Good evening, Madam Chair and members of the committee and my neighbors and other residents. My name's Jim Christian. I live at 11 Woodward, which is the corner of Center and Woodward, and this is going to go in my backyard. I'm really quite concerned about that. When you look at the drawings and the diagrams, it really doesn't reflect the neighborhood. I'm sure you've all driven Scott and Woodward and saw the quaintness of that neighborhood, and we just don't see how this building fits into that. To think of that number of people living on that small street, the increased traffic flow on that street, we just don't see it as viable in any way. That neighborhood were all custom-built homes anchored off a farmhouse at the Bend, as you all know, and to see that a building of that nature that doesn't reflect the neighborhood culture or background would be very sad, in my opinion. I know the application is calling for more stories than are allowed by the bylaw, and I know that's what part of this application will be reviewing, but we just don't see it. You think of the environmental impact. I'm no floodplain expert, but I think there's a big risk with the floodplain. I understand that property is in the protected area, and what happens when we start digging that parking garage underneath that building, what impact does that have on the environment? What impact does it have on the neighbors when we start disturbing the underground water to that extent? The shadow report, I would say that the developer has tried to impact the shadows with the way they've set back the building, but it may have been a cloudy day when they did the assessment, so I'm not quite sure. We'll have to take a look at that a little more closely as you look at that in your report. And the trees that surround that property on the east side and the north side, we're really not quite sure of the impact that will have on us in the long term. So it's really concerning to think that this building could be built on that street. Woodward and Scott were designated one way for a very good reason, and our neighbor Holly Johnson wrote a letter today outlining the reasons for that. That's a sharp bend at that corner, as you all know, and if that road becomes two-way, what happens to that? The very reasons that council back several years ago decided that needed to be a one-way street. So we're concerned. You could take this as official objection from my wife and I that we don't support this development, and just concerned overall about the impact on our neighborhood. Thank you.
Thank you very much. I'll just remind folks, because I know a lot of you joined as the meeting was already in progress this evening, all of the accompanying staff reports for all of the study reports for all of the applications this evening are available on the city's website at www.brampton.ca. So if you want to see things like the shadow studies and the traffic impact studies and so on. And also, following tonight's meeting, you're always welcome to make submissions to the planner following the meeting that, while this is the public portion of it, further comments when you leave tonight and go home and say, I should have said this or I should have brought up that, you can always submit those comments later. Okay? Our next delegate. Hello, good evening.
Hello, good evening, everyone. My name is Stephanie Vega, and as a new homeowner in the immediate neighborhood of 80 Scott Street, I am speaking today to express my explicit denunciation of the application submitted by Gang & Walker Domes Ltd. JTS Properties Incorporated to amend the official plan and the zoning bylaw for the development of a new high-rise apartment building on the current property of Scottwood Towers. The proposal of a building that exponentially exceeds the pre-existing structure of Scottwood Towers in terms of height, depth, ecological footprint, resident volume, and resource consumption calls for the presence of a construct that is aesthetically dissonant with its situational context and that is socially disruptive to the appealing sense of an intimate community currently present, an appeal that served as an integral facet of my desire to purchase a property in the area. The studies submitted to date in support of the application in conjunction with the informational presentation provided by the property's landowners and Gagnon Walker Domes during the summer of 2018 further raise more inquiries and concerns regarding the extent to which several impact items were assessed in the initial planning of the structure. These impacts must not be considered simply as abstract hypotheticals, but as critical changes that fall within the scope of the lived experiences of the neighboring residents and wildlife. I delineate the following inquiries, comments, and concerns in response to these studies and the application at large. Many of these questions have been submitted in writing, but I will call to attention just a few today for the public record. Of note, how much soil will be required to build proper retaining walls to protect the surrounding properties? How will these retaining walls be tested, and what legal protections are in place to protect the homes of the adjacent residents? Is the infrastructure able to support an underground lot to the proposed depth, and is the municipal system equipped to support the number of proposed units and the exponential increase in the number of residents within this concentrated area? Construction of a structure of this magnitude, both underground and above ground, is hazardous, especially being in proximity to the Brampton-Etobicoke Creek. How will the water drainage of the area to build this underground lot affect the integrity of the creek? And has the Ministry of Natural Resources and Forestry been consulted in determining if there are any endangered species, both plant and animal, that will be affected by the structure and to the extent that they will be affected? The construction of a high-rise will impede on the integrity of a heritage community, I posit. And I ask, has there been an extensive assessment of the historical properties in the adjacent area? And is the development of a building of this enormity permissible under municipal and provincial policy to occur within a residential heritage community? The proposed construction will further impede on the adjacent residents' access to amount of natural light, as my neighbor has alluded to, in the currently experienced, impacting the well-being of the community. But in addition, the demolition and ensuing sustained construction of the property will impact noise levels, street access, and will severely impact integral processes such as garbage collection and snow removal over several years. Is there a safety plan in place to protect the well-being of the residents and the integrity of their homes from hazardous debris during demolition and construction? And have provincial health policies been consulted in determining how such debris will impact human and wildlife health? I have to say that during the open house of this summer, we were told as residents that this construction will be advertised as luxury apartment buildings. But I do ask then, what studies have been completed to justify the construction of a luxury building? And would a luxury building in a strictly residential community outside of the central area be able to sustain such prices? And again, I understand that the application is for an apartment, but again, we were told that these would be luxury buildings. And as my neighbor has alluded to as well, that the traffic impact study, I believe, does not comprehensively consider the significant hazardous bearing of Scott Street as a two-way street. As was said, the angulation of the sharp turn at the juncture of Scott Street and Woodward is a high-risk zone. So I ask, has an extensive assessment been executed to propose safer alternatives for the community, and what alternatives have been suggested? I conclude by expressing my opposition because this proposal calls for a structure that infringes upon the ecological and social cohesion of a familial community. Thank you.
Thank you, Stephanie. Is there anybody?
I know, right? You can Way to go, girl. It's a hard act to follow.
Follow that.
My name is Susan Reeves, and I live at 9 Woodward. I'm Jim's neighbor. This is my new backyard. I'm a little concerned that the wildlife, the trees, my privacy, I live a lot in my backyard in the summertime. These people are going to have a bird's eye view. Not that, but anyways, it's just my privacy is going to be really restricted once this goes in, if it goes in. It is far not keeping with the integrity of any of the buildings. Even if it had any kind of historical integrity to the building, but no, I mean, to people, our neighborhood is just definitely not going to be able to assume that many more people. Been there 25 years, and I've seen quite a few changes. And I remember when the neighbor got it changed zone to a one-way because the cars coming the other way in the wintertime who weren't slowing down were ending up right on their front lawn. And so it is definitely a safety issue. As far as wildlife go, we now have issues with, Holly, what are they? The coyotes, and they're being driven in by the construction. And where are they to go? And the same with all the other wildlife. Where are they to go when we start taking away their homes? And all the wildlife that lives around in the back, it's heartbreaking to know that the trees will be destroyed. I think there's enough of that, going on. Our street is very quiet and unassuming, and I really don't believe we need another 300 people living on it. I don't think we're capable of handling it at all, and I'm completely opposed to it. Thank you.
Thank you very much. Is there anybody else that signed in? Hello?
Hello.
Have you signed in?
I did.
Great,
yes.
thank you. If you could state your name, and you have 5 minutes. Thank you.
Okay. My name's Angela McDonald. I'm here representing us from 5 Woodward Avenue, which is right on the corner. So the issues at hand are all what Stephanie had said earlier, same with the wildlife. Traffic just is not conducive to having a two-way street. That building will not fit there. There is no way that building's ever going to look great with our great properties that we have on that street. Key points are that there are trees that are actually butternut trees that are part of an endangered species. There are quite a few of them that they would have to tear down to have that building there. Again, that street floods constantly. The snow removal is not to have like that many people there. The snow would not, nobody has winter tires. They're going to get stuck on that street. There's a slight hill there. We live right on the corner. Privacy is very much an issue. And one point my dad wanted to ask is, was the intent of the downtown Brampton Anchor Mobility Hub to include the property given that the 800-meter radius does not include the whole property? The highest density of mobility hub, floor space index 4.0, is to be close proximity to the center. Is it appropriately that the FSI of over 4.0 is occurring at the periphery of this area? So we are completely opposed to having that kind of building right next to our house, right at the corner. Young children, we don't even have any children that say watch for children at play. There's a corner there. It's not going to happen. Us trying to get out of that corner, our property is right at the corner. Nobody sees me getting out. Get honked at. We need that extra space on the side as a one-way street so those people that are speeding can actually stop and pull over while I'm getting out of my driveway. So, opposed. Thank you.
Thank you very much. Are there any other delegations tonight? How many more folks are there to speak? If you could just put your hands up in the air. Okay, thank you.
Good evening. My name is Grace Vega. I live at 7 Woodward. I'd just like to say that I oppose this proposal. My daughter has said everything I wanted to say. As Jim and Sue, this will be in my backyard, literally in my backyard. I feel like I'll be looking at a hospital building. I don't feel it's historical looking, traditional, like the homes around that area. It's way too high, too large. It's a beautiful place we live in right now. The building that is there, yes, it's old, but not everything that is old has to be demolished and made into something humongous. All it needs is TLC. So I just like it to make it public record that I do oppose to this.
Thank you very much, Grace. Our next delegate. Welcome, Holly. You don't need to state your name for the public
have to
record.
sign
I
in,
know
though.
who you are.
Well, I am Margaret Hawley Johnston, and I have lived at 10 Woodward Avenue since December of 1949. I have sent to the council, or the committee, quite a thorough history of what I can recall of living in that area. And I will be very happy if you read it and understand that people's lives are affected by decisions that are made by you people. There are people behind all these writings, and it's important that you always understand about lives, I think. For a piece of humor tonight, I listened to parkland around our area. Central School Flats, I will agree with. Duggan Park is how you say that, after Darcy Duggan. But then I heard about Scott Street Parkette. Now, ladies and gentlemen, I have just about lost my mind over Scott Street Parkette. When the sign went up, I thought, oh my God, there's a park. There's no park or parkette. There is a sign that says that. And when I called to ask, how can this be, I was told, well, it has a number on it. And if there was some kind of emergency, the emergency vehicles will now see that number. Meanwhile, on hot summer days, as I'm walking, I'm stopped by newcomers who are looking for places for their little children to play, and they stop and they say, where is the parkette? And the little one is kind of trying to get around the sign, which isn't easy, and is about to go down to the creek. And if you read my report, you'll understand that I have witnessed at least 2 drownings in the creek. So this is a laugh to say that this is one of the features for parkland for this particular building. Anyway, all I can say is to get the feel for the neighborhood and to understand where I'm coming from, I would be delighted to take any of you on a walking tour on any day at your time so that you can, in your mind, have that picture. And I want to take you along Scott and along Woodward. And then you're going to understand why all of the neighbors are here tonight, why all of the neighbors have sent something in. And we are passionate that this is not going to happen. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Holly. Are there any other speakers this evening? Sylvia?
Sorry, I wouldn't mind saying a few things as a resident, if that's okay.
Can I ask you to sign in over at the side? Sylvia, you've signed in?
Yes, I have.
Terrific.
Okay, so
Go
my
ahead.
name is Sylvia. I'm a resident of Ward 3, and so I do go downtown on a regular basis. The city does need more dwellings. This is, so there are logical increments for increasing the size, and this seems a bit excessive in terms of just how big it is compared to the other buildings. I believe there's legitimate concerns about how deep the garage is going to be, and with flooding, I believe some of the garages downtown have issues with water on the lower level, and when you get that deep, that close to a floodplain, you do get issues. So if there were fewer levels to that, that would deal with it. But then the problem is, if you don't have it underground, then you need it above ground, because if the city doesn't want to reduce the rules, and then you're causing more runoff. There's definitely concerns about the looks of this building. I'm generally not that picky in architecture, but it's interesting to say the least. I believe the shape of this is actually designed to deal with residents' concerns on sunlight, which from the height level of it, so a different building had apartments that were by it. This is much taller than the thing it's replacing, and there's not that much around it, so it would be a substantial change for that. If the building were smaller in terms of height and less steeped, I guess, it would be less of a concern. But part of the issue is it's just too big an increment compared to everything else around it, and I believe there are legitimate concerns about the project as proposed.
And we have one last delegation. If you'd like to come forward. Hello, good evening.
Good evening. My name is Ariel McCrum. I'm a resident of 80 Scott Street. So one thing I wanted to mention that wasn't really brought up in the proposal is they're mentioning like this great unit and everyone's gonna love it, but no one's really talked about the displacement of all the residents. Where are we gonna go? And what we're missing out on, and everything that we've basically, like, that's the reason why we're there. That's why the people at the houses are there too. So, for example, you don't even need an alarm clock half the time. You wake up to the wildlife. You wake up to woodpeckers. You wake up to birds. Like, there's so much beauty in the area that will be taken away if you let them build the building. Again, the flooding, the one-way street, I have no clue how you'd put probably double or triple the residents in the area. We wake up in the morning and on our way to work, I see bunny rabbits, I see raccoons, whatever wildlife, you name it. Like, building like a Toronto-type condominium building, it's taking away all of that from the area. And you won't get it back once you build all that. It'll be gone forever. So, again, I'd like to thank the residents in the surrounding houses, because when we had a meeting with our building, they basically put the idea that the house, like the homeowners, agreed with the building. And with this meeting, we can see that nobody wants the new building at 80 Scott. So I think that's it.
Great, thank you, Ariel. So there's no further speakers this evening? Okay, one more hand at the back.
Can you speak twice?
No, you can't, I'm sorry, not through this process, but you are welcome to submit written comments to staff if you wish. Okay. I guess as the area councillor, I'll move the receipt of the applicant presentation, of the staff presentation, and all of the delegations this evening. I see no questions from member of council. All those in favor? That's carried. Thank you, and I'll move receipt of the approval of the staff report as well for the statutory public meeting. All those in favor? All those in favor? That's carried. Thank you. This just the staff report. Yeah.
Thank you so much.
Yes. Ladies and gentlemen, we have one more application this evening. If I could ask you to quietly exit the room so we can move on with the agenda. So we have one last application this evening. It is item 4.8. It's an application to amend the official plan and zoning bylaw to permit a 3-story building containing office, medical, and commercial retail uses. The applicant is Ganya Walker Domes on behalf of Malwa Management and Construction Limited, 10394 Hurontario Street in Ward 2. Is anybody here this evening who wishes to hear a submission from the applicant and see a presentation from staff? Is anybody in attendance this evening that wishes to see a presentation from the applicant or staff on item 4.8 on Hurontario Street? Seeing none, let the record show that no one attending the statutory public meeting requested an applicant submission, staff presentation, or requested to speak on this matter. Does the applicant wish to make a presentation this evening? Let the record show that the applicant declined the opportunity to make a submission to committee on this matter. Do any members of the committee have questions on the application? Seeing none, Councillor Palashi, would you like to move approval of the staff report? All those in favor? All those in favor? That's carried. Thank you very much. And that concludes our statutory public meeting portion this evening. We have no delegations, no staff presentations, no planning reports, no minutes, no other or new business. There are no referred matters on tonight's agenda, no deferred matters, no notices of motion. I'm going through this. This is the last public planning meeting. No notice of motion, no correspondence other than what was handed out on the statutory public meetings. Councillor question period. Are there any questions from members of the committee? Any questions from members of the public this evening? We have no closed item. Councillor Palashi.
Thank you, Madam Chair. Through you to you, how are you feeling chairing your last planning meeting?
Living the dream.
Congratulations.
Thank you very much. And now those three words we like to hear most. Motion to adjourn. Councillors Bowman, all those in favor? That's carried. Have a safe drive home, everyone. Thank you very much to staff and the public for coming out this evening. And good luck with the applications. Would you mind? Okay. Just let me make a quick phone call. Didn't get a message.